Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here. In this video we'll be taking a look at Reaper, but in a little bit of a different light. You see, there's a type of content that was absent in Shadowbringers Deep Dungeons. This content challenges players to climb a tower, or as the name implies, delve deep into a dungeon in a roguelike mode in which they'll encounter enemies, traps, and bosses. You're asked to level up once again inside, earn upgrades to your offense and defense, and then collect powerful items to circumvent all of the threats. And if you're looking to delve into the deepest depths of these dungeons, know that one wrong move could lead to a wipe, which will reset your progress and force you almost entirely back to square one. Game over, try again. So why am I explaining this? Well, we didn't get one of these in Shadowbringers, and a lot of people were pretty disappointed at that. But it seems that in Sly's interview with Yoshida, it revealed that they do have intention to release a new one. They had kind of mentioned this. They had previously claimed that they would maybe do preliminary work, pick a location, and do everything they needed to do in case they wanted to do one. But in this interview, it sounded much more firm in the answer. Play the clip.
In Shadowbringers, we didn't see the return of any four-man difficult content like Palace of the Dead or Heaven on High. Is it being considered for Endwalker?
So of course, with the 5.x patches, I know we did make an announcement that we will be taking a break from new deep dungeon content, and we actually got quite an overwhelming or unexpectedly large amount of feedback that people actually really miss that content, and people were really looking forward to it apparently. So, and we do pay attention to what is being said by our community, but we weren't expecting for this many people to want to have these deep dungeon content to come back. So we are planning for it. I can't say exactly which patch or what kind of content it's going to be at this point, but we do intend on making the announcement once Endwalker releases and things have settled down. So I think you can definitely keep it in mind that we do have plans for it. I think you can look forward to it.
So this combined with Yoshida's comments from Rich and Asmund's interview in regards to more difficult 4-man content is getting players in the Deep Dungeon community more amped. But first, players want to tackle the existing deep dungeons, Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High, with Reaper and Sage. So I thought in this video we could look at the strengths and weaknesses of just Reaper in both of these deep dungeons and see how it stacks up. Now keep in mind that we are basing this video off of the potencies and the way the job was designed in the Media Tour build, which is still in development and still very much subject to change. But I have a feeling that it probably won't change so drastically that this is that far off base. So first up is Palace of the Dead. This deep dungeon is capped at level 60, which pretty seriously hinders Reaper's toolkit. That being said, their utility and potency should still offer a pretty good experience in Palace of the Dead. A really good experience, if I may say so myself. They have both of their movement skills, Ingress and Egress, which also will give you an instant cast proc of their range skill, and that should prove pretty handy for any on-the-fly kiting that's needed. Their Shadow of Death will increase the damage they deal to the targets it's applied to, and you should gain the 10 bonus gauge off every enemy from this as well. They have Arcane Crest, which will offer them a powerful and frequent shield. It's crazy, 10% of their max HP on a shield every 30 seconds. Even if it only lasts 5 seconds, and even if it doesn't have the regen at this level, that's still really strong. As for how they'll actually deal damage in Palace of the Dead, it's pretty straightforward and actually very ping friendly. Their only off global cooldown damaging skill is Bloodstalk, and other than that, they have their 1-2-3 combo and Shadow of Death. They also have Soul Slice, which will give them 50 gauge and will have 2 charges. With a 30-second charge time, they can do a mini burst every 30 seconds, or save them up for a big burst at 60 seconds. And since almost everything is on the global cooldown but hits super hard, this makes weaving things like sustaining potions, roll actions, whatever you actually need to do, much cleaner for high ping players. So Reaper's kit might feel underwhelming at 60, but their overall output should be very efficient, both in sustain and burst categories. For survivability, they have the damage barrier, bloodbath, second wind, and then leg sweep and arm's length. For mobility, they have Ingress and Egress, on top of Sprint, of course, which can be used to kite in dangerous situations, buy time for defensives, and both the initial cast and the ability to return are going to be at your fingertips, which is a lot of mobility for the job to have. The instant cast Harp will do you well also. Heck, even the slow cast Harp out of combat has a really high potency, just everything hits really hard on this job. Really, the biggest weakness for Reaper is that at the end of the day, it is still a melee job. It has this mobility, it has this ranged attack, but anything that was dangerous to the other melees is likely to remain dangerous for Reaper itself. That's going to make some enemies just completely avoid them, or it's going to be a problem. But that being said, I still think it's going to turn out pretty good. Now for Palace of the Dead, there's one thing that any serious runner actually thinks about, and that is the floor 180 boss. And that heavily determines how effective a job is at actually finishing to floor 200. This boss has a tight DPS check for the last 15%, and depending on a job's tools, it could smash through it with just a bit of setup or have to do some absolute janky stuff to get by. Fortunately for Reaper, their numbers support that it shouldn't have too bad of a time here. So let's use another melee for our comparison. In fact, let's use the one that it shares gear with in that of Dragoon. Now, Dragoon defeats the floor 180 boss in just over 30 seconds with a whole 9-ish seconds to spare, so in other words, it doesn't really have that bad of a time. Now, assuming Dragoon defeats the boss in the same time frame after Endwalker comes out, meaning that its potencies are going to be adjusted, the boss's HP is going to be adjusted with the stat squish and everything, let's just assume it still defeats it with the exact same rotation in the exact same amount of time. Reaper deals roughly 20% more potency in that same time frame, and honestly, I think that's without even considering the fact that Shadow of Death gives them the extra 10% damage. Now, Reaper may lack the Life Surge heal and the 100% crit that comes with it, but the Barrier Shield should prove quite useful as well, especially if the phase drags on longer than 30 seconds. Considering it does this almost entirely with GCDs as well, Reaper's floor 180 clear might be really almost cozy. Now, if the scaling causes this boss to cut a bit closer than this after the stat squish, Reaper will get a potential second shield, like I mentioned earlier, and they do get access to a bit more burst. With the food click-off trick some jobs use, they might even be safe to survive a fourth meteor. Either way, I'm thinking Reaper will struggle more with the enemies up to this point, and the floor 190 boss itself, more than the floor 180 check. It may not have Ninja's hide, which is a great thing to have in Palace of the Dead, but it'll probably slap. Now for Heaven on High, Reaper is going to feel a bit better, but unfortunately their kit's complete feel really hits more at 80 than it does at 70. At this point, they'll just get access to their AoE Soul Gauge Burst Builder, and their Soul Reaver GCDs and that of Gibbet, Gallows for single target, and Guillotine for AoE. The single target ones are very, very strong GCDs, almost equal to that of Machinist Drill, so the burst is going to be very, very potent. I will say I'm kind of mixed about how I feel about their off-global availability in Heaven on High. You see, in Palace of the Dead, the one place you need to burst super hard, you can have up to 4 back-to-back Bloodstalks. In Heaven on High, that would take a decent amount more setup, but Soul Slice Bloodstock, especially if you have any left over from the previous monster, is gonna be really, really strong. That's thousands of potency in just 2 GCDs, and that alone might give them more of an edge than I guess I'm really considering compared to the other jobs. I think compared to the other melee, Reaper might not stand out as much in Heaven on High as I think it will in Palace of the Dead. It's going to be a strong and fun choice for people looking to take it on as a melee, that's for sure. But man, do some of the other melees have just super nice stuff at this level range. Monk will have their Blitz, which I haven't even really considered. They will have that in Palace of the Dead also, but maybe that's a whole video of its own. But Monk will also have Riddle of Earth, Riddle of Fire, they'll have Brotherhood, so their burst will be really strong. Ninja's Hide and Ninjutsu Burst are always something that are worth considering. Samurai has their usual burst, Dragoon has its life opening up, so I think it's going to be a tighter comparison with Heaven on High, and I think Gunbreaker is still going to really, really shine in that dungeon. But man, do I still just think Ingress and Egress are going to be super good in Heaven on High at the very least. So I think that pretty much covers everything I have to say about Reaper in the 60 and 70 deep dungeons. But man, I'm really, really curious what it's going to be like in the level 90 deep dungeons. Kits are so loaded nowadays, and jobs have so much burst potential and so many tools at their disposal that I really wonder what a level 90 deep dungeon is going to end up looking like. Are they going to try to do anything that stands out? Are they going to follow the same formula as they did before? And what's that going to mean for people who like to do solo runs? Clearly at this point they have to know that soloing is a big part of the deep dungeon community, and that it should probably be something that is feasibly possible going in. Does that make it too easy? Do they end up tuning it up for those people a little bit more? I don't know. That's going to be something I'm curious about. And since they were talking about more difficult 4-man content, obviously they always say deep dungeon is 4-man content, but I do wonder if they add something that's kind of a 4-man exclusive mode. I'd really like to see that. A mode that is specifically designed to be done with 4 people, but still have like a default mode that's considered normal, that would be equivalent to what Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High complete clears actually look like now. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. We probably won't see it until the 0.3x patch or the 0.4x patch, so we're talking about over a year before we even get to see this update to this content, if it even is what it is, because the quote does say that what type of content it is we don't want to announce yet, so I don't really know how to interpret that, but we'll have to wait and see. So with that, that's going to be a wrap for this video. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned. We'll be doing plenty more Endwalker content on the channel, both as it approaches as well as after the fact. So thank you again. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, take care.